Do you think in 2021 that any company really has the luxury of avoiding change, though? I mean, I think you're totally right, Tom. A lot of people probably don't like change in businesses. I mean, change can be painful sometimes, but it seems to me that the pace of change it only increases every year. And now with all this craziness going on out there, there's definitely no reprieve from that, right?
Yeah, change seems like a constant. In my experience, change is more the status quo than not. Than status quo itself.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about every business, and I mean, to your point, David, when you talk about business, whether you're a small business or a large enterprise, I see a lot of this transformation having to occur, especially with a lot of the younger generations when they come in there, they're bringing a lot of this stuff with them. I watched a news show not too long ago, and they were talking about this young lady. The whole millennial thing, right? The millennial, she works on a farm. She was raised on a farm, and her father's aging out. Her grandfather's aged out of the business, and it's time for her to take over. Well, what is she doing? She's bringing a lot of these new advanced technologies. Bringing social media, making the selling of cattle for her farm a lot more efficient. And what's happening? Well, they're selling a lot more cattle, but they're getting a lot more reach outside of the local regional areas where they happen to be. And it's an inevitability. If something as simple as we kind of think of a standard business as being a farm, right? Not really technologically advanced. Well, you'd be surprised if you go onto a farm nowadays, really what technology actually exists on a farm today.
Yeah, you're really onto something. I think I do this just about every night, and I probably shouldn't, but it's the end of the day and I'm winding down. So how do I wind down? I get on the internet on my phone and look at a whole bunch of controversial stuff. But if I'm lucky, maybe the stuff I get is just really intriguing. Like, oh, that's neat. And I'll see, I saw a little video the other day of some kind of farm machine. I don't even know what you would call it, a harvester, collector, and stuff. Clearly, I wasn't raised on a farm, but what really struck me was this whole device, this whole machine. For one, they had a drone above, following the thing, and the guy inside of it was watching a computer screen, he's playing a game like Farmville or something like that, right? And the whole device itself, there was multiple trucks, and one was a drone truck, I think. And this whole operation was simultaneously here's where I know a little bit of farming. It was tilling the earth, was tilling the ground, and setting it all up to plant, and then planting the seeds in it, and then covering up all at the same time. Just boom, right? And I always thought, this is more high tech than just about anything I've ever seen. Farming is on a whole nother level than I've ever even known about. So that blew my mind. That sounds like that's kind of what you're talking about, Benny.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from my perspective, and maybe you guys will kind of, tell me what you're seeing out there too as well. Every business has some sort of transformative type of technology that exists. I think about this from time to time. When I started out my career back in the early 90s, and what you could actually have for a business. You think about what it would be back then, really, when internet was really just kind of getting off the ground, and we all had computers, but really you were based on what programs you had within the computers itself, right? Mm-hmm. So think about what a business back in the 90s, what it took for a company to generate, say, $1 million a year in revenue. You had to have administrative assistants, you had to have a bookkeeping staff, you had to have so many different processes that were human reliant for that. And today, you literally can run a business, have over $1 million in revenue, and be a one-person operation. And in terms of what digital transformation brings, one of the key things I like to tell people is look, I'm a big believer that in somewhere 10, 15 years from now, you're going to see mom and pop shops, one-person, two-person operations that are literally going to be able to break the $100 million mark, because digital transformation is part of what's being involved. Technology is really giving us those advancements that we should be taking advantage of. Every company should be looking into it.
Are you sure that just won't be because we'll have 10,000% inflation, Benny? Because I think there could be a way to. No, I think you're onto something, Tom. Let's think about ahead, some of these trends. What's going on? I want to hear a little bit more on your take on that, because what kind of things do you think are on the horizon with digital transformation?
On the horizon, the one thing I will say is that is always changing, which means you're always going to be better off embracing it than not. Digital transformation, you're going to have to embrace it and to even remain competitive. In terms of what's on the horizon, I expect there to be the entire large business world was very reluctant to embrace, their digital transformation with regard to telework, and schools and other institutions that have had a very old school model for how they, that they were very fearful of changing, and the current circumstances have forced them to make that change, and they've now realized that it represents real efficiency and real advantages that now they have to have to stay competitive. So it's for the positive, but it is. But there's always something coming. There's always something coming that will be more efficient or more productive, and you have to be ready for it and embrace it.
In some respects, you may not. You don't have the choice. It's, do you want to maintain profit levels? This is what's necessary. This is what's happening. I mean, I guess that always, because we can look back in the history, like robotic assembly and car factories and stuff like that, right? The assembly line. This is the evolution of that. So work from home, that's a big one. You said telework, yeah. So that's the thing that's kind of hit us this past year with COVID, right? And we're all kind of examples of that. We're broadcasting to anybody around the world. We're all in our offices at home, right?
And I think to Benny's point, nobody's out there tilling their fields with an ox anymore, and you'd be hard pressed to do so if you had to compete with the guy that has the drone and the 3 vehicles that he's running from his office.
I'm sure there's a few millennials out there tilling their fields with an ox. If you want to relive that whole, the glory days.
Getting back to basics, right?
Hey, that's the end game with all this, is that people are going to desire to get back to basics.
Yeah, we're talking about organic. We're talking like organic fertilizer. So yeah, working from home, and it seems like there's a lot of different ways that it kind of accelerated things that probably were going to happen anyway. From the transformation standpoint. Do you think any of that's would be something that would be alarming to like the average person and the worker? Like, should people really be rightly fearful that, well, with all this digital transformation, I mean, we're just all gonna be out of a job, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of fear, and the faster you can get used to the eventuality and embrace it, the better off you're going to be, because it's a fact of life whether you want to embrace it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Tom's point too as well. Yeah, there's certainly going to be fear. People get comfortable in their bubbles. We all get, I'm a victim of it too. I get comfortable in a routine and doing things the way that has always worked for me. But we're going to have to take a look at what some of this change means and how we're going to adapt and really bring it into the fold. There's always things, people worried about losing their jobs. Uber comes around and all of a sudden taxi drivers are really worried about what that means for, the future for what they're doing. We're doing all different type of things like, I work with clients and they were very afraid of being able to do the teleworking thing. What does that really mean? I can't control my employees. I can't watch over them. And we're to what you guys were talking about, with COVID, we were all forced into that environment. And we had a lot of clients who basically were not prepared. And so the rush to actually move to telework was really important at the beginning of this. But now I'm seeing a lot of people just starting to embrace it. And for those, if you're a dentist or if you're a barber, of course you have to have people come over to your place of work. But all of those elements, and I really believe that if there's anything that's happened, if there's been any positive that's come from what we've experienced over the last 10 months or so, is that we have accelerated some of the course of change. We my son now, he's upstairs and he's taking classes. He hasn't been in a classroom in 10 months. And so all of those things are all part of what if we're not being adapted to it, we're being forced into it. And so back to your original question, David, I think that, we're being forced into it regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I got some interesting stats here from a survey. This is published on zdnet.com. So this was essentially looking at how people were contacting or getting support from organizations. So when you need support and contact and to contact organizations, what was your main way of communicating before versus now? And this is looking at, from before COVID-19 and then essentially, how people expect that and what they've been doing. So we look at visiting the stores and branches of the company, before COVID is like 40%, but, during and in the future, like, so during COVID and going into that, it's more like 26%, a huge drop. Kind of makes sense, right? Especially if businesses close down. But phone call even was like 28% down to 20%. Website gone up slightly from 14 to 16. Apps and email gone up a similar amount. Across the board, all these ones where it's moving away from the kind of old school analog or in person to all the other ones. I mean, we kind of expect that, but there's kind of an idea there that this could continue. Like, just because things could, quote unquote, go back to normal, I mean, how much will it really? And do people actually want it to go back to normal? That's really got my head spinning. Will people actually want it? Because when you talked about telehealth, Tom, well, Denverdata developed a telehealth solution, that could work for a variety of different types of business, whether it's like you said, like a dentist, Benny, or like a podiatrist or some kind of doctor, right? And it just struck me that, that's kind of necessary now, but it could be kind of convenient to just do half your doctor's appointments and not have to go. I mean, what do you think about that, Tom?
It's the change that people are afraid of and not the advantages that come with the change. So that's why people have to be forced. And I think it's human nature. I was not but 30 years old when I probably 26 when I finally gave up on rolling with the times and was accused of being at risk of being a dinosaur. And at that point, I changed my course and decided to embrace change because I knew it was a fact of life. And it's painful. It's tough at first. It's easier to be a curmudgeon and go, these new people, this modern world's bogus. But it isn't, and it's not. It doesn't hurt after you embrace, after you embrace it and accept it. So I'm excited to learn new things about technology every day. The other thing I think is technology. It's growing at an accelerated pace, which means it's going to be a greater and greater impact on every human as we go forward, and your ability to compete with other humans is going to come down to how much you embrace that change, those technologies and efficiencies.
Hi, this is Sarah from Denverdata Web. Thanks for watching. Please like our video and subscribe for future digital strategy chats. You can also visit our website at denverdata.com or find us on social media at Denverdata Web.